more phenomenal jobs numbers for the President Joe Biden. To whatever degree you believe a president is responsible for unemployment numbers, job creation, etc., and I believe that the answer is a president is somewhat responsible for those things in a context of broader global economic and national conditions. To whatever degree you believe Joe Biden is responsible, the jobs numbers are really good. The jobs numbers, in fact, are starting to get more people to say, we may have unemployment that is too low. Here is Maria Bartiromo having to contend with another strong jobs report, and she admits it's strong, but then she brings on the experts to try to explain maybe unemployment's too low. Maybe there are too many jobs being created.
Overall, you got to look at this report as a big positive. We've got more jobs created than expected. Joe LeBourne, you've been saying this for a long time, saying that the economy is a lot stronger than anybody understands. Your reaction?
It takes a while. Everything Steve said makes complete sense. The numbers are good numbers, no question. The fact that the unemployment rate fell is good. It was because household employment was up over 700,000.
All right, so it all sounds pretty good, right? Well, let's bring on an entire panel and see if someone can poke holes in this. Maybe the jobs report is too strong. Maybe 199,000 jobs created in November is too many jobs. Let's see how they can put that together.
That we're seeing right now has everything to do with the Federal Reserve. So we got hotter than expected numbers. Cheryl just gave us the numbers, 199,000 jobs versus an estimate of 180,000, and the market sells off. Why? Because it's such a strong report that it may alter the Fed's view of cutting interest rates next year.
There you go. The jobs report may be so strong that the Fed will say, hey, you know what? Instead of cutting interest rates in 2024, we need to either keep them level or even increase them because the economy's too hot, and therefore the stock market is going to be down. Well, but 199,000 people who weren't working now are, right, Maria?
Or perhaps continuing to raise interest rates. We're expecting a pause at next week's meeting, but what happens then? Joining me right now to react is Job Creators Network President and CEO, the author of The Real Race Revolutionaries, Alfredo Ortiz is here. SMBC Nico, Chief Economist and former White House National.
All right, so you get the point. Eventually they go into the panel, and the argument is the jobs report may be too hot. It may convince the Federal Reserve not to cut interest rates, and thus it's going to keep pushing inflation up. Of course, the reality is, even as we've seen interest rates go up, the whole point of interest rates going up is to try to tamp down on inflation, which has happened, which was 0 in October and 3.2% year over year. So you all know the routine. We're not going to get a serious economic discussion on Fox News. And the serious economic discussion is, by the standards we've used for 50 or 60 years, we have a really great economy. By the standards that social democrats like me would like to put in place so that our economy could be a little more like some of those Northern European economies, less inequality, better safety net, not having outrageous military and defense spending, right? By that standard, we're still falling really short. Inequality's high, wages are up, but not as much as we would like. We still have people, 40%, that can't afford an unexpected $1,000 expense. That's the real conversation. But by the metrics we have all said, these are the 6 or 7 metrics we use to evaluate an economy, things are good. And eventually it starts to become difficult even for Fox to downplay what are just the numbers, at least on these daytime shows. And we can look at other numbers. I know people will say, but David, what about this other number? Inflation is down. The stock market's having a really good year. We'll see how December shakes out. Wages are up. Job creation is high. Unemployment is low. Consumer confidence is okay. Again, we've talked about how not everybody is seeing what the economy is doing. Extraordinarily dynamic economies in many states, overwhelmingly blue states, I admit, but very dynamic economies in blue states that are growing, and innovation by virtue of patents. And it all looks very solid. It doesn't mean that Joe Biden is God's gift to progressive economics, but he's done some good things that have helped. They certainly haven't hurt. And Republicans are now going to have to figure out, if the numbers stay like this for the next 11 months, how do we defeat Joe Biden? And this is not about Biden. This is not about Biden's demented. He doesn't know what day it is, or he does, or he's completely embroiled in some kind of criminal fraud, bribery that he's, or not. This is none of that. This is, if you zoom out and you look historically, when the economy was doing as well as it is doing now by the numbers, incumbent presidents tend to get reelected. That's a historical reality abstracted from any specific concerns about Joe Biden. Republicans are going to have to contend with that. I don't know how they do. I guess by lying and saying the economy is terrible. So I wrote another book for kids. The first book was Think Like a Detective. The point of the first book was to teach kids critical thinking, which Republicans don't want them to learn, because when kids learn critical thinking, they don't vote for Republicans. The new book is Think Like a Scientist. This is a fun adventure teaching kids the scientific method. Again, Republicans aren't big on kids learning the scientific method, because when they do, they're less likely to fall for Republican lies about climate change and vaccines and so many other things. You can get the new book as well as the first one at davidpakman.com/book. This is part of the Adventures in Thinking series. Can you imagine that we're doing this? We are. davidpakman.com/book. 13,500 copies of the first book have sold. I'll bring you an update soon on sales for the second book. Think Like a Scientist, davidpakman.com/book.